Welcome to Julie Whitney Scott Presents Let's Talk Theater, a Mind for God production sponsored event, heard only on WGRN LP 94.1, the Green Renaissance Station. Let's talk theater. Well, I am so pleased to welcome Colleen Cunningham. I have met this woman when we did a play called Talking With that was James Blackman's JB3 Entertainment. Was it his first production? I think, or maybe second.
I think it was. Maybe a second. I don't know.
It might have been, but it was one of the very first JB3 Entertainment productions. And I met you, Colleen, as we were playing two different characters. And I wanted to talk theater with you. And the reason I want to talk theater with you is because, like me, you're seasoned and actress.
Good word for that.
And, you know, you have worked as an actress and you've been in the theater world for a little bit here in Central Ohio. And one of the things that I want to bring on Let's Talk Theater is the why. The why do we do what we do in theater? You know, why are we even here? What got us to even want to participate in the theater, in that world of entertainment, and what it has done for us individually, you know, and as theater people into the world. So I wanted to bring you because one of the things I liked about you, Colleen, is that you're very, at least as far as I can see, open and honest about things. And I feel I can talk to you and we can just talk theater and about some of the things that you've seen in your years of theater and changes, if there's been any changes. So let's start off first, Colleen, with you giving our audience into the why, Colleen, and when you first found out that you decided, I think I want to be on the stage. I want to be a part of the theater world.
Well, I did some theater in high school, and I had told my mom, I said, I want to make my living there, and she was not happy with that. You know, but I had done some things on stage. And then I want to say my senior year in high school, I played Frau Frank in Diary of Anne Frank. And whenever I read plays, whenever I think of plays, I think of the stories they're telling and how those stories can change the world. And I think it was a combination of just liking the stage and the people around the stage, and then also how stories change the world. And when I first went to college, my dad had just died and we had a business and I was going to study business management, and I did start out with that, and I ended up in business education, and that's what I did for a number of years. And then I started doing community theater again. And then I got the opportunity to study theater at Miami as a grad student because they needed somebody to run an office. And I had both skills. So they paid my way through. So yeah, so it was pretty young, but it's the stories we tell. It's not just entertainment. To me, theater is not just entertainment.
Colleen, you brought up a really good point. So many people look at the theater world as just entertainment, which is probably why your mother, when you said, that's what I want to do, was probably like, yeah, right. You're going to get a job, you know, to make some money. People just think of theater as movies, entertainment. You can't make any money there. Why would you waste your time with that? And you said your family had a business. So of course, you know, when you have a business, the parents are looking at who's going to help run this company. So yeah. I'm glad you brought that point out. Did you have any difficulties other than them just saying, you know, I don't really like that? or were they supportive? I think that's a good question I'm asking you, because there's so many young people out there that when they tell their parents, I want to do this, and if they get a negative reaction to it, some of them are not strong enough to go ahead and do it anyway. And then others, they'll say, okay, all right, I give up. I just forget my dream. I'll get yours. And what was that for you? Were you able to just do that and be accepted with that?
Not necessarily. I mean, she always came around eventually, okay, when she realized I wasn't going to move away. Because I did look at moving to New York, and I liked having a regular paycheck from my teaching job, because that was one of the things. I had a teaching job when I started my graduate school, and I took a leave of absence from that, so I was able to come right back. And you really do have to think about, what does your life look like if you were going to pursue a degree or going to pursue this career in New York or Chicago, where you don't know anybody and you don't have any support system there, and you're not making a regular paycheck. And so when I was looking at that, I was like, is that really the life that I'm going to want to pursue? She did not like seeing me on stage, and partially because she was right. She was pointing out things in my acting that when I learned how to act, I should have listened to her. I would have been better a lot sooner, because young women tend to go into this breathy voice when they act and not really connect with who they are. And when I got at Miami University in Oxford, which is where I studied, suddenly, and it took me the longest time to listen. And then finally, one of the acting instructors said, "You're not ready to learn yet." And I had to kind of go, no, I'm right. And then, no, I'm not right. I have to sink into who I am on stage. So part of it was because I was a bad actor. Okay. And then when I started doing community theater, I played Agnes of God. And that was the first time I knew that I was okay.
I think it's such a good point that you brought up in regards to how you had to have somebody say to you that you're just not ready. See,
Yeah.
Because you became the character that the playwright wanted you to present, and that you allowed the director to hone you into bringing it out, so that Colleen was not involved in. I mean, of course, we're involved in it, because we present it, but we present it in looking at it as the view of the character, and not as
within.
us.
I mean, all of us have, all given the right set of circumstances. As Stanislavski would say, the magic if we were in that situation, if we were raised that way, or had that presented to us, we all have the capacity to be or to have those feelings. We just don't, because we're us. But we all have the capacity to feel angry enough at somebody to kill them, to feel scared enough to do something that we personally might not do now as we are. But if we were that person in that situation, like that character, we would do it, or at least contemplate it. And so it is us, and yet, like you said, it's structured by the playwright. And you have to be true to that.
Yeah, it's so important to be, to be true to that. I, as a playwright, and because I started off playwriting, that's what I did, was just playwright and direct. That's it. And as I progressed, and as my youngest daughter went away to college, is when I actually got into doing a little bit more with it. And by just somebody asking me to participate and help them out as an actress, that's how I became an actor. So, it was never anything in my mind that I would ever act. But people would be like, "Oh, girl, you're a natural anyway." You know how people, you know what I'm saying? Like, you've always been an actor, like, so you know how people are, and it's true in a way that I've always had that type of, and it's probably because I write, and I write characters, so
Right.
at least I'm always observing, thinking, looking, watching people, because I get empathy from
Well,
watching, observing, listening to people, to be able to write characters, stories about people that actors can, like you say, look at, analyze, and have empathy for, and then bring the character to life. What's been your most challenging thing as you have gotten older in acting? Have you found it it is it easier to get roles as you got older than it was? You know what I'm saying? Than
yeah, I
when you were
know.
younger. And the reason I'm asking, because like I said, I jumped in there in the 50s. So I don't have the experience of being out there on the stage, except behind the stage. I don't have the experience of being, oh, I'm the one that's bringing this character to life. I came in the, oh, but you've had progression.
Well, when you're younger, they want a certain look. And I've never had that look. Okay, never have had that look. I've always been kind of a character actor, even when I played younger parts. Agnes of God, nuns. I've played lots of nuns. Agnes of God, Sister Rita from the Runners, Stumbles. They are not your typical young person's parts. And even when I was over at Miami, now I was one of the older students because I was in my late 20s. I turned 30 over there. I'm playing much more oddball characters. The only reason I find it harder now is because people have a certain view of what people at certain ages look like. And I don't look old and I don't look young. I'm kind of in there. I've gotten some really good parts in the last few years. I did Martha up at Curtain Players in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. James cast me in Doubt, which I love that character. I loved Martha. It's kind, and it's one of those things. I'm also not thin enough to be certain things, and that's been kind of a challenge over the course of time. I didn't work for almost 20 years. I didn't do any theater for almost 20 years. When I married my husband, and he had 3 boys, and I was directing at Franklin Heights, and he was working with me because he works in theater. And we missed one whole weekend with the boys because we were doing a show. And we got to the end of that weekend, and I said, we've got to decide whose kids we're raising. Are we raising ours, or are we raising theirs? And I said, my vote is for ours. And so I thought I was never going to do theater again, ever. I was teaching theater. I was directing plays there. But there was a lot of politics regarding that. And at one point I said, I'm done. I can't, well, number one, I couldn't do certain things when I was pregnant because of the way this theater was set up. I couldn't get to the catwalk. I couldn't do other things. I couldn't move stuff around. I mean, I'm waddling around. I'm 40 years old. And I figured I was never doing theater again, and then when I retired, Frank Barnhart had one of my former acting students from Franklin Heights in his class. And he said to her, because I'd worked with Frank at Reality, And he said to her something she did, because I had taught theater at Miami, college level theater for non-majors. And when I went to the high school, I didn't do it any different. They got all the theory. They knew who Meisner was. They knew who Stanislavski was. They, Cohen. We used a college level textbook because they didn't have anything when at Southwestern at the time. They do now. And I just bought the stuff I knew. So, yeah. Okay. So she gets up to Columbus State with Frank, and he goes, who taught you this stuff? Like, you already know a bunch of this stuff. You know how to break it into tactics and use verbs. And she says, oh, Colleen Cunningham. So then he said, would you come? Would you come? And thank God. I love teaching. I like teaching business. I like teaching theater. I guess I'm a teacher,
Well, when you're a teacher, it's a natural thing. And it's really, I know, was really heartwarming for you to have a high school student be able to learn so much from you. And I think it's a testament to what we should do as teachers. As you said, just because you were at the college level and now you were at the high school level didn't mean that you had to dummy down for the students. You know what I'm saying? Instead of dumbing down for the students, you brought them up by giving them the knowledge that you had as a teacher. You didn't say, well, I'm just going to not tell y'all that because you're not in college. It's like this, like you said, this is what I am. This is what I know. This is what I do. I'm here now. So now you get the benefit.
And Rick helped me at Franklin Heights, and we had students that walked out into technical fields with no college education and were successful because they knew how theater ran. And because you can't do everything when you're in a theater. So, we got a new light board and they didn't give us any training on it. I handed those guys the manual and said, figure that out. I don't have time to, and they did. And so when they went out into the field, they were just like, well, yeah, give me the manual and I'll figure it out because that's what we do. And I gave the kids the same amount of responsibility that they would have had in a theater. So the costumer brought me designs. She's pulling clothes. She's not drawing them, but she's bringing me, well, this is what I thought for this character. And this is why I thought this should be the progression of her clothing, and because that's what you do as a costumer. And that's what you do in theater. You make your case through the script.
Through the script. Yeah, and that's one of the most important keys you're saying. Through the script, you do that. Because, playwrights, they allow for directors to add things and to put this vision on paper. Because a play, if you're reading a script, it's either going to give you the direction that, for example, if you're reading a play and if a playwright puts in there a direction, that's right, because that's what they really want to make sure that the director knows. You make sure this is here. But that's not all through the whole play. You see what I mean? Yeah. You've got you've got let's say you got 8 pages where it's just the dialogue and stuff, where the playwright is allowing visual for you to visibly see what's happening. And then there may be a line in there or something with a direction because they want to make sure that that point is made, that character moves from this, that is done. So you have enough room.
Well, as I say in class, it's a blueprint. But anytime you work on a house or anything, which, as you know, is what I've been doing, you have a plan, but sometimes you open up the wall and it doesn't work quite that way. You know, there are some times when you just step back and you go, well, that was a good plan. And how can we present that without doing it quite that way? Because we're in a different venue. We've got a different set. We've got different actors. I just did last year was it last year? Oh my God, it seems like forever. I did Doll's House, but I kept seeing it in the 1960s, early 1960s. Now, it was a play written in 1878, and I had to read the play and make sure there was nothing in there that was really gonna be a problem if I moved it to the 60s. But I felt
like a historical fact or some, see, and then that's the key, because that's the key, that you had to make sure, okay, is it reasonable and feasible?
And will moving it help explain what the playwright, would it keep true to what the playwright wanted? What was Ibsen attempting to do? And for that particular play, we moved it to the early 60s. It could not be 1968. Too many things had passed between 1961 and 1967. And moving it to just move it, I hate that. Moving it to illuminate more about the play, that's fine. But sometimes directors will just tack a concept on there that doesn't do anything to help us understand the play better or make it more relatable. And so the first thing I did was, can I do this? Because I kept seeing it in Barbie's Dollhouse. We didn't end up doing it that way, Blueprint. This is where we started, you know, but we did do it in the 60s and it worked just fine.
I'm so happy you brought up the point that the blueprint and the way that we have to have a production team, because the production team helps refine that blueprint. And you all work together to figure out how are we going to make this work. And I really love the fact, Colleen, that you said, while remaining true to the playwright, because that is the key. Because if the playwright, you know, some playwrights will give you permission to just, you know, like, you do what you want to do. Okay, then do what you want to do. But when you are getting plays and you're producing them and you're signing over for rights, they're telling you in there, you cannot change this, you can't change that, you can't do it. So, right. But you still have some leeway if, you know, in doing it, if you do the homework, like you said, look at the play, look at it, see if there's some way I can add this or change it to another time and presence without violating the rights of the production and the contract for the playwright.
And for the translator, because the translation I wanted, nobody had. I had to actually find this woman's daughter in Norway to get the translation I wanted, because I think translations are so important, because you can really skew what the playwright intended if you are doing not originally an English play. It's been translated into English. And that happened a lot with Doll's House, where they kind of overlaid this feminist thing. And a lot of people go like, oh, it's a feminist play. That isn't what Ibsen wanted. That he says this is a play about human rights.
You know, Colleen, that's really good information that you just gave us in regards to how important it is that if you're going to try to change the works of a playwright, that you find out, number one, especially depending on the period it was written, the correct translation of what you're trying to change, because words are important and they're used in different ways in different countries for different things. And we changing a word that we think fits our Americanized will have a totally different meaning in Switzerland or somewhere else. So I think that's really good that you brought that up for anybody out there that's thinking about wanting to present a work that's old, and that they understand that there are rights involved, and that sometimes it takes some time to really track down the people that you need to make sure that you're presenting the work in the way that the playwright originally wanted it to be presented, and you're true to the work. Well, I've just had such a good time with you, but no one can leave Let's Talk Theater without giving a word of encouragement. And since you have such a vast experience in the teaching level and the acting level, and as far as the production of the whole team theater, piece, I want you to just give whatever kind of piece of advice you would like to give, a word of encouragement to somebody out there that's pursuing this.
Oh, this is from Jay Duckworth, who is a props designer and educator. We tell stories, and as the landscape changes, we change with it. That's how our art has survived for 2,000 years. And actually more than that. I've got this big interest in theater, and we give it all to the Greeks, but I'm wondering how much they were taken from the Asians and the North Africans, but that's another story. Okay. I got a whole thing going, because Sanskrit theater is like 5,000 years old. But anyway, everybody's worried right now that we're never going to do theater again because of COVID. But there was plague during Shakespeare's time, during the Greeks, and theater keeps coming up because it's about the stories we tell about being human. And that's never going to end. And people are always going to want to get together to do that, not just through this. Orson Welles quote, and I love this: "The enemy of art is the absence of limitations." People always want to have more money, more time, but we need limitations. And as somebody who also has a business degree and a theater degree, the economy does better when there are limits. Capitalism does better when there are limits. And so I would say, though, that's my inspiration. We're not going to lose theater. We're going to learn from this. We're going to present these stories in a live setting when this is all over. It's happened for thousands of years. It's going to continue. And right now, we need to look at what these limitations are giving us.
We will see each other again on live stage, and then we will be able to give ourselves a real big
oh my God, yes. Oh my God.
hug.
Yeah. I just, everybody wear your mask.
Yeah, wear your mask. This is Let's Talk Theater with Julie Whitney Scott and my special guest, Miss Colleen Cunningham. Thank you for joining me, Julie Whitney Scott, your producer and host of Let's Talk Theater, a Mind for God production sponsored event, heard only on WGRN LP 94.1. For the full video interview, go to my Julie Whitney Scott Facebook page.